And this is Dave Diaz. And Dave is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to ask Aaron Eckert to call the roll, please.
Kevin Albanese.
Here.
Linda Clifford.
Here.
David Diaz.
Here.
Joan Hancock.
Here.
Pastor Herrera.
Here.
Bob Lamb.
Here.
Ed Lang.
Here.
Matt Kelly.
Present.
John O'Rourke.
Here.
Bruce Rust.
Here.
Frank Shetter. And Paul Shapino.
Here.
I'd like to note that Frank Shetter has an excused absence, Aaron. Now will the members of the board and senior staff and also members of the public please introduce yourself. Members of the public, it is not mandatory, it's purely voluntary. So we'll start with myself and go to my right.
Dave Diaz, board member.
Cindy Christensen, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Bob Lamb, board member.
Kevin Albanese, board member.
Karen Robinson, Chief of Licensing.
Bruce Rust, board member.
Laura Zuniga, Chief of Legislation.
Don Chang, Legal Counsel, Consumer Affairs.
Steve Breen, information officer.
Wendy Bowman, Testing Division Staff. Natalie Turner, Testing Division Staff. Eddie Israel, Testing Division Staff. Andrea Sisto, Classification.
Greg Johnson, Park Specialty Contractors.
Steve Anthony, Association of Environmental Contractors.
Beverly Carr, Political Group.
Michael Rizzo, Business Services staff. Larry Perry, Administration. Richard Markson for Western Electrical Contractors, former heating cooling contractors of California, American Mutual Trade Association.
Terry Seabury from Western Electrical Contractors Association. Morning, Christine Lally, Department of Consumer Affairs. Eileen Spoon, Contractors License Courses.
Daniel Cohen, Television Execution.
Bill Koshianki, Contractors License Service, and former CSFE employee.
Ted Rieger, North Numford News.
Phil Verlioli. Ken Grossbar, Adelaide's Grossbar Director.
Jeff Tommy, Licensing Division.
Judy Hernandez, Personnel Unit. Karen Adams, City Personnel. Nancy Griffin, Enforcement.
Scout Member Enforcement.
Jeff Cedars, Hardware Plaster Design.
Anna Rodriguez, Enforcement. Sue Gaffney, University of San Diego Public Use Law. Betsy Figueroa, Licensing Division.
Matt Kelly, board member.
Pastor Herrera, board member.
Rick Lopes, Chief of Public Affairs.
Linda Clifford, board member.
John O'Rourke, board member.
David Fote, Chief of Enforcement.
Ed Lang, board member.
Paul Shafino, board member.
Steve Sands, Registrar.
Joan Hancock, chair. At this time, I would like to make a few introductions and first recognize our outgoing chair, past chair, Paul Shafino. Just want to recognize you once again, Paul, for your contributions to the board, your sage advice, and your wonderful, humorous demeanor that has kept things going in tense moments. So it's been a pleasure to have your countenance and continued consult.
Good job, Paul.
I also want to indicate that Jim Miller and Mark Thurman, who were former board members, are no longer with us. They're still on the planet, but no longer with us, and we're going to miss them. Jim served 2 terms and was initially appointed in 2005 by Governor Schwarzenegger and then reappointed 4 years later to serve a 2nd term. And Jim filled the spot of building official, one of the 15 slated spots for the Contractors State License Board. And we'll miss him. He brought a certain solace to the board. He served as chair in 2007 and subsequently served as chair of several committees. Jim Rears from Riverside County. He is the Director of Planning and Building in Big Bear Lake, and rumor has it he might be up for retirement, so our good wishes for him. Also want to recognize Mark Thurman, who served with us he was appointed in 2010, and Mark participated on the board as the chair of legislation and worked with, I believe, our outgoing chief of ledge and incoming Laura Zuniga. And he brought his business acumen and great repertoire of construction experience, which I was reading his bio recently, and it's just an amazing bio, serving in the construction world starting in the 70s. So we'll miss him, and want to thank them both. I also at this time would like to make a presentation to Heidi Linser-Hill. Heidi's out there. Raise your hand first, Heidi, so we know where you are and who you are. Although we are very sad to see you leave the Contractors Board, we are very thankful for your many years of valuable contributions to the board in your 14 years of service here. And we are especially excited for your promotion to the Department of Consumer Affairs, Office of Professional Examination Services. You promoted to that department this month, and I'm sure they're very excited to have you. You all might not be aware that she served administering, well, you didn't administer, but served over your group of employees that administer somewhere between 30,000 and 80,000 different computer-based examinations throughout the state at our 8 testing locations. And in addition to Heidi's staffing and management responsibilities, she helped determine the methods, the practices, policies, and procedures for maintaining the validity, reliability, effectiveness, and efficiency of the licensing examinations. Heidi has more than 18 years of license assessment experience and psychometric testing expertise, and I'm going to read to you what psychometric testing expertise. Psychometric testing having to do with the science of measuring mental capacities and processes. What an interesting. I'm going to read the rest of this because I want you to get the accolades that you deserve, and so well deserved. Heidi also helped improve national contractor examination standards by serving as a committee chair for the National Association of State Contractors Licensing Agencies. We call that NASCLA. Helping to develop approval and accreditation programs for examination providers. She has helped CSLB with special projects such as budget change proposals to provide funding for testing's subject matter expert program. She's helped provide key requirements to meet sunset reviews, collaborated with other licensing division units to assure occupational analysis is used when determining license classifications, and helped CSLB meet its annual goals and objectives through new testing and technology methods. We are confident that the Office of Professional Examination Services will benefit from Heidi's leadership as much as CSLB. So Heidi, would you please come up here so that we can present you with this certificate that commemorates a well-deserved, very productive time with CSLB. First of all, let me do this, and then let me do this. I want to, at this time, also introduce our two new members to the board, and other board members probably have already talked with you, but Linda Clifford and Kevin Albanese, and I caught Linda in the hallway and asked her if she would mind giving a short bio. We'll make her go first, and
Ladies first. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, actually. And
First thing we have to teach you is to turn on your microphone.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so thank you, and I will keep it short. I'm a native Sacramento person, but I've worked throughout the state of California for years. I've had a contractor's license, both A and B, for many years, decades actually. I started very young, like child practically. I spent about 15 years in the vertical industry, and I've spent the last 27 years with C.C. Myers, Inc. as their CFO, building bridges, highways, emergency projects, you know. And so most people have heard of some of the things that we've done. I'm excited to do this and to lend whatever expertise I have and helping hands, hard work that I can put to the benefit of the CSLB in the state of California. Thank you.
and Kevin.
Good morning. My name's Kevin Albanese. I grew up in the construction business. Our family has a business, Joseph J. Albanese Incorporated, based in Santa Clara. Due to child labor laws, I can't tell when I started. I got my first contractor's license in '99. Have, I think, 4 specialties and a couple generals, both the engineering and building. Our company does a lot of concrete, civil work, whether it's buildings or in the civil arena. Also a lawyer. Please don't hold that against me. The contractor's license law has been a passion of mine for a while, and I'm just honored and humbled to be here, and look forward to working with the board to improve our industry. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'll turn to agenda item C, well, before we move on, are there any other comments from the board with regard to any of these introductions, or? Yes. Bob Lamb.
I'd have it's not about the new people, but welcome, and you'll enjoy it. It's a good board to work with, and I look forward to working with both of you. But I would like to give a short report on something I'd reported on before. Those of you who may remember, I reported on a contractor that is a good friend of mine. I worked for him for many years in Southern California, who was injured during the Boston bombing attack. And there was some, after all this time, he's finally getting to come home from Boston. His name's John Odom. He also holds several various contractors' licenses. He's a very, very good guy. He required 11 operations after shrapnel severed arteries in each leg and lost so much blood that his heart stopped beating twice. He will do something Friday that he and his wife worried would never happen. They're returning to California, the last of the marathon bombing victims to go home. Friday marks 143 days since they left their home south of Los Angeles to watch their daughter run the Boston Marathon. And they recently were honored at Fenway Park. Strangers paid their tab. That's happened to them for months in Boston. The people of Boston have treated them like one of their own. They consider it their second home now. And he's planning on actually going back to work Monday. He was a week from retirement when he was injured, and he wants to go back to work at least for that week. But knowing John like I do, they'll probably need a crowbar to get him out of that office, but maybe not after this. I'm hoping that he'll spend some time with his wife and actually do some things they want. But this is a story that was run in the Boston Globe, I believe yesterday, and Rick has been kind enough to cue it up for us. It's only about a 2-minute video, and I'd like the indulgence of the board to just take a look at this. This is a very brave man and a very brave wife that stuck with him the entire time.
Basically, it's just they couldn't amputate at the time because the wounds were so catastrophic, really significant.
Do you want to be there to be in the trial?
He's not angry. He doesn't hold anger over the.
Play fine in rehearsals this week.
That was really loud, too. Turn the volume.
That works. It works, yes. Well, no, it's not better.
He would have been an amputee, but his injury was too high and too severe to amputate. They couldn't amputate at the time because the wounds were so catastrophic.
Do you want to be there to be at the trial?
No. No.
Why not?
I really don't care. I get that when I get watching him, I get angry. Very seldom do I really get angry, other than when we start talking about.
Yeah, he's not angry. He doesn't hold anger over the whole thing. We've seen the good in so many people. It so outweighs what happened that day by two evil people. But you do bring him up, and if he has to watch him on TV, he gets upset. So we just avoid it.
Well, the big emotional part about going home is going to be seeing a lot of people that gave us a lot of love and support while we were here, and then really getting my life back and getting back to work. And people said, "You're really going to go back to work?" Yeah, I am. I'm going to go right back to work on Monday. I doubt if I'll be there all day, but definitely going to be at work on Monday.
What do you think? Last day in Boston? I know, I can't wait either. I can't. It's going to be a new reality. You know that.
Oh, yeah, lights. Sorry. Yeah, they didn't tell you that when you got the chairmanship? I mean, chief cook and bottle washer, too. At this time, I'd like to propose or make a motion that a letter be drafted by staff indicating the support of the Contractors License Board and his continued recovery, and congratulating him on returning to work, and we expect him to pay his dues on time.
It's been moved and seconded that we propose a letter of support for John Odom, and all those in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
On with Agenda C, the public comment. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items on the agenda as well as items not on the agenda. However, the board cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. The CSLB welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the CSLB's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. But if for some reason we forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, a member of the public desiring to comment on the item should raise their hand and they will be recognized. Also, we will be limiting public comment to 5 minutes per individual. Are there any individuals that wish to address the board at this time? Please step forward, turn the mic on, and state your name and your purpose.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Cohen. I am Chief Information Officer of Television Education, Inc. Is Aaron or someone able to distribute these to the board? First of all, I would like to thank the board for the opportunity today to speak in front of you. At the CSLB meeting on June 11th, 2013, I spoke about a new policy that has resulted in the rejection of license applications of many qualified applicants who were unable to produce copies of permits and contracts requested by the CSLB program technicians.
Can you speak up a little, please?
Okay.
Or move the mic towards you?
At the CSLB meeting on June 11th, 2013, I spoke about a new policy that has resulted in the rejection of license applications of many qualified applicants who were unable to produce copies of permits and contracts requested by CSLB program technicians. These include applicants who have complied with the law and only perform jobs under $500, which does not require a contract or work that is exempt from the permit process. CSLB staff acknowledged that some of the issues raised at the meeting were valid and made several changes to what they refer to as the additional experience verification process instituted by the licensing division and independent of the APA. Please see the CSLB staff's attached two-page memo that outlines the current process. I would like to acknowledge and commend the staff for listing all of the documents in the CSLB's acceptable form of experience documentation in their revised experience verification letters. Despite the welcome changes, there's still a problem. In many instances, and as recently as Wednesday, August 28th, applicants who provide additional documentation to the application technicians are receiving a second letter requesting specifically permits and contracts, not allowing for the other forms of documentation. If the requested documentation is not provided, the application will be voided. For your reference, I'm attaching a page from today's Public Affairs Programs update. This is the second to last page, page 9. When viewing the attached copy of the CSLB graph showing the application rejection rates, please note that in a single month, the rejection rate jumped from 42.5 to 66.5%. These changes closely correspond with application exam units' implementation of their new additional experience verification process. One of the CSLB's chief concerns is the underground economy. That consists of unlicensed contractors who are taking jobs requiring a license, dealing in cash to conceal their activities, and avoiding paying taxes, as well as failing to provide workers' compensation coverage for employees. The public interest is served by a careful review of license applications. However, are the new policies implemented by the CSLB staff responsible for rejection rates as high as 66.5%? Are the new policies prohibiting law-abiding applicants from obtaining a license bond and insurance? Do the new policies represent an overreach that is contributing to the growth of the underground economy? I am requesting that the board consider suspending the additional experience verification process reflected in the attached letters and instructing CSLB staff to follow the process already established in section 7068, subsection G of the Business and Professions Codes and California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Division 8, Article 2, Section 824, and specifically to make the license application acceptance not contingent upon submission of permits or contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Because this issue is not on our agenda, we cannot act on it today. And we will, at this time, take the information, take it under advisement, and contact you as to the next series of processes that have to take place to review it.
Thank you very much. May I request that it be added to the agenda for the next meeting so that it will appear. And I did bring this up previously, and it's in the minutes of the last board meeting.
I think this is probably going to need to go first to the licensing committee to vet,
Okay.
and with our chief of licensing, Karen Ollinger, who's here today and has a copy of this, so we will.
Thank you. And I would like to thank Karen Robinson for helping with the initial letter, but people are receiving follow-up letters only requesting permits and contracts, which the list is much more extensive. So,
All right, thank you very much for your time.
thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good morning. Just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Christine Lally. I'm new to the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'm the Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations. Joined the department in July and very much enjoying my new assignment and very much enjoying going to the different board meetings and getting into learning from all of you about the important work you're doing. So as I learn information, I will of course share, and I hope I can count on you to do the same. And please look to me as your liaison if you have questions or need help department-wise or with the governor's office. I am here to help you. So please keep the communication flowing, and I will do the same. So thank you very much. Very excited to be here.
Thank you, Christine. Good
Thank
to
you.
meet you. Any other public comment?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eileen Scroden, and I am the owner of Contractors License Courses in Santa Clara, and I have worked there for 40 years. I currently have many clients also stuck in the work experience loop. These clients are trying to do the right thing in obtaining their license and the correct insurances, which without a license they cannot obtain. We are all aware that we're coming out of the largest recession in California history that really impacted the construction industry. For the self-employed applicants, this new requirements are really difficult to provide contracts and or permits because they were part of the underground economy and hence did not keep all the records they should have. In spite of being qualified, these new requirements will prohibit them from obtaining their license, and the result will be keeping them in the underground economy. So I appreciate your attention, and I hope to hear back from you on what we can do to get these people licensed. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Who are you with? I'm sorry.
Contractors License Courses in Santa Clara.
Any other public members wishing to address the board at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item D. This is the election of board officers. At our last board meeting, Mark Thurman was elected to serve as vice chair. Mark was not reappointed, so in accordance with the procedural manual, we hold elections today. I would like to nominate at this time Dave Diaz, who is currently our secretary, to serve as vice chair, and also at this time to nominate Ed Lang to serve as secretary. And if there are no other nominations from the floor, I would ask for a motion to approve.
Second your motion, Madam Chair.
I need a first.
You said you made the motion, so I seconded it, but I'll make the motion if somebody will second. I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and any other discussion? No other floor nominations? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Agenda item E. This is the review and approval of the June 11th, 2013 board meeting minutes. Do any board members have any comments with regard to the minutes?
Make a motion they be approved as mailed out. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion's approved. Agenda item F, the Enforcement Committee report. Ed Lang and Dave Fote will give us the Enforcement Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the board. It is great to be here today and also provide an overview before Dave Fote give his overview of the program update. We're into Go Green with CSLB campaign. You probably heard a lot about that. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Dave Diaz, who was the leader of the the committee for attending the meeting last week to discuss the Joint Force Task Force and how partnering state joint enforcement with the construction industry can assist CSLB go green with CSLB permit compliance campaign. And this was a successful venture. CSLB is currently working with California Energy Commission at the same time to implement strategies to gain compliance with Title 24 energy efficiency requirement. What is also interesting is that the consumers would achieve during this process a 300% return on their investment if the HVAC contractor they hire performed the work to perform the work by code requirements. Unfortunately, 95% of the residential HVAC changed out are performed without required permit, and ductwork is not being tested for excessive leakage. Now, with that said, the Enforcement Division has taken a close look at the HVAC contractors, partnering with other agencies, including the Franchise Tax Board, to focus on HVAC contractors, and which is important because of the lack of compliance in that industry. Dave Diaz, due to his knowledge and expertise, was able to provide input on how to develop strategies to achieve this permit, licensing and energy efficient compliance within the HVAC industry. So I'd like to thank Dave Diaz for his willingness to assist in this important endeavor. Let's give him a hand on that, please. Also, it was my humble experience and opportunity to install and give the oath to two new recent peace officers. On Tuesday, I swore in Peter Cowan. I don't know if Peter Cowan is here today, from the San Francisco Investigative Center. Peter came to us from the Department of Correction, where he has been a correctional officer since October 2010. Prior to that, Peter spent 31 years in the construction business and was also a real estate broker. Peter became a licensed contractor in 1995. And we say Peter's not here, so. Another peace officer, Hugh Hennison of the Sacramento North Investigative Center. Hugh also came to us from the Department of Correction, where he worked as a youth correctional counselor and a correctional officer. Hugh has a 21-year military career with the Air Force. Go Air Force. He retired as a senior master sergeant. It is wonderful. He was a wonderful experience and able to swear in two police officers, and that was culminate my day on Tuesday. Now, if you would look into your packet, agenda item F1, Dave Folks, Chief Enforcement, will provide an enforcement program update. And during the update, you will see a video, and after the date, you will see a video. So we hope to impress you and keep you informed of the enforcement activities around the state. So, David.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. If you'll look at page 1, at the top, you will see our settlement statistics. We remain committed to working licensee complaints timely with a real effort and looking for opportunities to resolve those complaints and have restitution paid to injured parties, and many times to help a contractor correct a poor business practice so that a complaint is not received in the future. The statistics we've included in this update are for fiscal years 12-13, July through June, and you'll see over $7 million was returned to injured parties. And again, the board objective is to resolve those complaints within 60 days of receipt, and we are substantially doing that, with 30% of those licensee complaints resulting in a financial settlement. 70% of the licensee complaints are dispositioned. Some are referred to arbitration or other avenues that are available for financial redress. On page 2, we have a highlight that it really it shows the ability that staff have to timely work a case, and that can relate to somebody that's being deployed in the military, and that's the one highlight at the top. But it can also be a situation where you have an elderly victim or someone that's lost the use of their electricity or their water in their home. And so by constantly looking for ways to triage our complaints, we're able to be in a position where we can move very quickly when necessary. At the bottom of page 2, we included a highlight that relates to our efforts to ensure compliance with workers' compensation insurance requirements. Unfortunately, we still have far too many licensees that have an exemption on file or are not reporting any any payroll to their workers' compensation insurance carrier. The positive, though, is it can be a real tool to compel a contractor to resolve a complaint. The policy that the board had implemented approximately 2 years ago is that if the complaint's received, you don't have workers' comp, you're gonna need to resolve that, and you're gonna need to get a policy. If not, we suspend the license, we issue a stop order. And that's proven very successful in compelling these licensees to go out and get a policy. And just to keep in mind, the suspension process is automated. The stop order is a very effective tool. If we find a contractor that has workers without workers' comp after that's issued, it becomes a criminal offense, and it can even be charged as a criminal charge of conspiracy. On page 3, we have an update regarding our investigative centers, which we have, I should mention, we have 2 intake mediation centers, but 9 investigative centers. A complaint that can't be resolved at the intake mediation center, and that can be a complaint against an unlicensed operator. Those complaints are referred out to investigative center for further investigation, or an egregious, perhaps an egregious act by a licensee. Once received at the investigative centers, we still make an effort to resolve those complaints when appropriate, and you'll see that during the last fiscal year, over $3 million was recovered to injured parties. At the bottom of page 3, we included an update regarding our Public Works unit. Again, that's a pilot program that the board established that's proven extremely effective. And you'll see at the top of page 4 what's happening in the Public Works arena. We have employees that are performing the labor on these Public Works projects that are not being paid. The example that we highlighted has over $400,000 in unpaid wages. Clearly that shouldn't have happened. But in the past, prior to the implementation of the Public Works unit, we would not have known about it. There would not have been any disclosure on the license to warn, if not employees, other awarding agencies when they're looking to hire a responsible contractor. And I just wanted to point out right in the middle of the page, on page 4, it's language that we took out of a proposed decision for an administrative law judge. And what it starts out by saying the Contractors Board and the Department of Industrial Relations are in privity, as they both have the ability to investigate to protect the public. It's not to punish an errant contractor, but it's all about public protection. So on many of these cases, an action has already been taken by another government agency, and we're embracing that action to take our own. And in a few minutes, you'll have an opportunity, though, to provide that disclosure without the board incurring the cost of taking the second action. But many times it is warranted. Often we need to impose discipline or perhaps even suspend or revoke the license. At the bottom of page 4, I wanted to just touch on what we consider to be a very egregious case, and it happens with licensees, but more often with non-licensed individuals that are out there to make a quick dollar. They don't have any intention of performing the work. And you'll see in this highlight, we had Joshua Barrow that wanted to put in surface for playground equipment, for a playground for his children. He paid $16,000 and no work was performed. The same thing happened to a Modesto Christian school, and Mr. Grillo was arrested on a warrant out of Stanislaus County, which was helpful. And while in custody, what we thought was interesting is while he wouldn't take the polygraph test, he did agree to write a letter where he acknowledged having received, I guess actually it's $11,500 from Barrow and not performing any work. And so charges are now pending with that case. But he had performed this scam in many states, many other states other than California. But we are comfortable that he is going to receive, he has actually been sentenced to 2 years in state prison. So if we continue to educate and to work with DAs, we're finding that we can still achieve significant state prison sentences when the public is being outright ripped off by some of these individuals, and especially these unlicensed ones like Mr. Grillo. At the bottom of page 5, we have another highlight regarding public works investigation where we partnered with Caltrans. Mohammed Rezi was very threatening to not only awarding the employees of awarding agencies, but other state government employees. We're very pleased that he has been convicted now, and he is going to be serving time in state prison. This was a partnership with Caltrans. This program has proven so successful that we do not have the resources currently to handle the incoming complaints. A real positive of this, though, of the Public Works Unit is not just investigating the complaints, it's also serving as a resource for awarding agencies when they're looking to hire a responsible contractor. Many times they'll call up and they'll want information for us, they'll want to talk about the classification that's needed, and they also want to know if they should make a referral. Our legal action rate for the cases that are referred to the Public Works Unit is approximately 50% because we don't want to put anyone to unnecessary work. It's not something the Contractors Board should handle. We refer that awarding agency to the other state agency that would be more appropriate. But I am pleased to report that we are interviewing next week to hire a second full-time person to focus strictly on public works investigations. And it's really been recognized by existing CSLB investigators as a very worthy position, so much so that we have 10 internal candidates who are very qualified. They're going to be competing for this vacancy next week. On page 6, we have a highlight with our peace officers. We've really focused now that we've been able to move forward in filling the 9 additional peace officer positions to find individuals that really have a passion for going out and investigating elder abuse cases. And I wanted to highlight Patrick Murphy and the investigation that was performed here in Sacramento by Joseph Martinez. Just did a great job. He's becoming recognized by his peers and by DAs as someone that understands how to get out quickly, how to videotape these interviews, how to put together an elder abuse case that will be well received by the prosecutor and prosecuted and result in state prison time. And we're seeing these now throughout the state being performed by our peace officers. I think many of you are aware of Avi Goslin. I know Registrar Steve Sands has covered it well in his weekly reports. But I just would comment that it really shows that working with DAs, looking at things differently, can pay off. I talked previously about conspiracy. Well, conspiracy can also be charged against somebody that's a qualifier or a license that was set up to aid somebody who's unlicensed to go out and defraud the public. And when that qualifier is not actively involved, we had 4 qualifiers in the Avi Goslin case that were charged with felony conspiracy for that. On page 8, we have a photograph, and I want to thank Steve Sands, Cindy Christensen, and all the board members for the support that you showed enforcement staff in enabling us to move forward to replace our fleet. I learned this morning that 12 new vehicles have been received. So thank you very much. I was hoping to get a photo of Nora Urias, but I couldn't quite pull that off. But maybe for the next meeting. At the bottom of page 8, we have a new enforcement strategy, and we conclude this update. We'll show a video. But we're looking for ways to work with other state agencies, and we have 2 retired annuitants. One is a former CHP captain, the other CHP lieutenant, and they brought an idea to me, and the idea was, why not educate highway patrol officers, especially the commercial division, to be aware of licensing requirements. Their first, of course, their first duty will be to enforce traffic laws and also to make sure that the vehicles are safe. But if you've pulled over a vehicle that's clearly unsafe, perhaps it has HVAC equipment in the back, has a load of lumber, if you have a partner at the CSLB and you suspect illegal activity, you could call that partner, and if you were able to determine where that vehicle is headed, we could go to that job site and determine if that contractor is licensed, do they have workers' comp, and we've entered into partnerships with a number of DA offices that want to look at the ratio of material to labor. And this could be a real game changer when you look at tax withholding and workers' comp. And so if you can determine the amount of material that's been purchased or where it was purchased from, that would open the door to obtaining those material records either by way of investigative subpoena or a search warrant. So we're real excited about this program. It's just, we've got a commitment of 3 officers here in Sacramento for the pilot. We've already performed the training. Everybody's been identified as working on it. And now we're just establishing our targets, and we're looking to partner with our industry friends to establish the targets in those industries. And so with that, Ed, we're going to show a video that might show you how beneficial this could be.
Okay, now we'll be entertained by a video, and also you'll be impressed by the enforcement activities. So if you would...
I'm with the Contractor State Licensing Board. Is this really your contractor's license number?
Tim Kent, he's, can you loosen that one a little? I'll loosen both of them, thank you.
Does Tim Kent know you're using his license number?
Yes, he does.
You know he could lose his license for that.
You want to see tears on that camera or what?
MSNBC wondered if the arrest, his 3rd in 5 years, would scare Pickering straight. So we went to his house the day he was supposed to show up in court. Instead, we found Pickering loading up his tools and heading off to a job.
He's rolling my way.
I'm behind him.
Okay, hurry up, Doug.
Come on, quick, you better catch up.
Pickering has spotted Vellucci on our cameras and pulls over at a gas station, refusing to drive off. So Vellucci approaches the vehicle.
Just wondering what you've been up to, man.
I've been hustling like everybody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who we got with you?
A friend of mine.
Okay.
Pickering denies being a bad contractor and tells us all of his customers have been happy with his work.
Okay, but anyway, I've never taken money from nobody. In fact, when I do a job, legit job, when I used to do contracting, I never took no down. You're allowed to take a down payment. I did the whole job. They trusted me. I trusted them, and I never had a problem. I've never been burned ever and got paid, ever. Because I do the job, make sure they're happy, and that's when I collect. If they're not happy, they're going to tell me why, and then, I got to fix it to correct, to collect,
Pickering's victims are outraged by his claims.
I mean, I know $5,000 is not a lot of money, but to me it's a very lot. I mean, it's a big deal. I don't take it lightly because it takes me a long time to earn that amount of money.
I wouldn't recommend him to my worst enemy.
I'm not that type of guy. I've never done that ever, But I, like Rick said, went down the wrong path, corrected it, fixed it, or whatever,
Pickering won't say where he is headed, but promises Rick he is not working or misrepresenting himself. Since Vellucci didn't catch him on a job site, he has no choice but to let him go.
He's got a silver tongue. He'll tell you what you want to hear, he'll make you believe it, and then he'll laugh at you when he's driving off.
The orange heavy equipment was owned by George Stanley, and he used it to defraud consumers nationwide. In fact, just in Northern California, the financial injuries in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so the idea is the Highway Patrol could recognize the out-of-state plates. There's certain identifiers that might lend itself to suspecting transient criminal activity. And so if we could just turn to page 9. We have our general complaint handling statistics. Just wanted to point out that we're still within our ability to handle the cases that are on hand. In fact, statewide, our investigators are carrying approximately 33 cases, which is right where we want to be. On page 11, we included stats as they relate to conducting stings and sweeps. For last fiscal year, we had a total of 208 sting and sweep days. You'll see that on page 11, right about the middle of the page. 1,800 legal actions. So we're very successful in identifying contractors that are either unlicensed or uninsured. On page 13 at the bottom, we've included our liability suspensions that relate to our partnering primarily with the Employment Development Department or Franchise Tax Board. During that fiscal year, we partnered with EDD on most of our operations, and as you saw in the accomplishment report, we're able to identify $64 million in tax withholding that wasn't reported. We had a meeting with EDD yesterday. We're looking to even strengthen that more and have more sharing of information as it relates to the registering of employees with EDD and sharing that information with State Fund and having State Fund perform the audits that will help us to identify the larger targets for investigation by the Department of Insurance and others. And if we could turn to page 16, just a quick update on the training. I think it was probably about 2 years ago that board member Bob Lamb and some other board members met with staff and asked what was their #1 concern. And it came back to me and to some of our managers was that training needed to be improved. And so we implemented a fairly aggressive training program. And you'll see that we have modules that have been established for investigation techniques. We've also provided them basic like law enforcement requirements. We call it principles on how to conduct yourself. We've had training provided by elder abuse experts such as Paul Greenwood down in San Diego, and on testifying in administrative, civil, and criminal arenas. And that training module has been picked up by the Department of Consumer Affairs. And our instructors, one of which is Mike Franklin, Deputy Attorney General, the other is Doug Galbraith, the CHP captain, have received virtually all 5s for the training they've provided on a scale of 1 to 5. So we're very pleased with what we put together and the direction that we received from the board. And that concludes the enforcement update, unless there are any questions.
I'd just like to make a comment. I'd like to thank you, David. I know that this was something that was very, very valued by the individual staff at every office that I visited and spoke to them individually, without supervisors present, I might add. And I think it was helpful in that everything I've heard back after the training is to just rave about it. And they really enjoy going in and they really understand their jobs a lot better. And I really think that the CSLB is getting a much better bang for their buck with better trained personnel and happier personnel that they're well able to do their job. And I personally want to thank you because I know you were a big part of it. And without your help and support, it never would have got where it is now. And now that it's spreading, I'm happy to hear that because that seems like what the Contractor State License Board does. We have good ideas here and it spreads, and that's what good government does. And I really appreciate the help. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for those kind words, and I definitely ditto those because I was talking to Dave the other day, and I think that we started out with about 3 or 4 courses that we were going over. Now we have 20, so this is outstanding. So thanks for your efforts and the efforts of the board to support that. We do have another video. Oh, yes, I see. Yes.
Just a quick comment. Congratulations to Steve and David for their efforts in the enforcement area. I will tell you, it's always a pleasure to read your reports, weekly reports, Steve, and all the highlights that you give us on the enforcement that's been taking place. It speaks well for the staff and what the Contractor State License Board is doing. Just a question I had on page 2, on the top there, and you stated, David, that many contractors lack the financial resources to resolve some of the complaints. And that's really unfortunate because many times, as the lady said in the video there, that $5,000 may not seem a lot to many people, but for many hardworking individuals, $5,000 is a lot. Yeah. My question is, and refresh my memory, you know, contractors have a bond. Can consumers file to
get reimbursed through that bond, or do they have to go through legal action?
No, if the contractor is not able to settle or resolve that complaint, we advise the consumer to avenues that are available to them. And one is to pursue the bond. They can simply make a phone call and ask for a claim form. If we send out an industry expert to evaluate the work, that industry expert report is made available to the consumer, and often that will compel we refer to them as surety companies to make what they call a good faith payment. Now, if they're not willing to make that good faith payment, we explain how they can pursue a small claims action, and they can name the surety company as a co-defendant. So that bond does play a valuable role in helping consumers receive restitution.
Okay, now we'd like to introduce another video. Rick, would you?
If I could just say a couple words before you see the video. For many of you, you have had the opportunity to meet Scott Carruthers. He came to the Strategic Planning Board meeting and also the Irvine Board meeting. And he brought forward an idea, and his idea was, why not go to material supply houses and find out who's purchasing the material? Start from that angle as a lead. Talk to the owners of the material supply houses, see if they'd be cooperative. Some are, some aren't. And work with the city attorneys to prosecute these cases. And so, with the direction of our former chair, Paul Schifino, I met with them, implemented a plan, met with the Santa Monica city attorney and then later the LA DA to put together a sting, and you have video of the surveillance we performed at supply houses. So it was very successful. It's a new way to look at things. We're looking to do even more of those type of operations.
Okay, let's watch the video.
Yeah, there is at the bottom.
Oh, there it is. The surveillance portion of the operation took place over a 2-day period, beginning in the early morning shortly after supply houses opened for business. CSLB investigators took up positions at almost 12 different supply houses in the Santa Monica, Culver City area, just north of the Los Angeles International Airport. Investigators watched as vehicles, both marked and unmarked, showed up and started loading up materials for a busy day on the job.
It'd be a good angle, and I've got a good angle here.
Although conducting surveillance can seem like watching paint dry, it's important to help determine if this will be an effective way to target unlicensed contractors.
Nice to meet you. And you go by Beto, I guess.
CSLB investigators were not on scene to just observe. They entered a number of supply houses, picking up business cards, even making contact with suspected unlicensed contractors. These were top targets for a sting operation scheduled for the following week. But the surveillance continued. Now back in the car, CSLB investigators took to the road and followed a few of the suspected phony contractors to their job sites.
Right turn over.
This guy gives us proof that contracting without a license is not the only law he's willing to break. Fortunately, drivers of the other vehicles investigators tailed during the surveillance did a much better job of following traffic laws. Now with the surveillance finished, it was time to invite targets to an undercover sting. Less than a week after the supply yard surveillance took place, a sting was scheduled at a single-family home in Culver City. Many of the work trucks rolling up looked familiar to investigators from the previous week. 8 appointments were scheduled, primarily utilizing contact information obtained from the supply house surveillance contact operation.
Yeah, there's 2 bathrooms and kitchen sink.
The targeted individuals were asked to bid on the installation of a tankless water heater system and other plumbing jobs. One of the suspects appeared to recognize a CSLB investigator from the supply yard.
You recognize me? We met. I think so, yes. Okay. You gave me your card in front of Express, I think it's Express Plumbing Supply? Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for it? Yeah, we're ready for it. So come on back here.
The 5th set of the day resulted in a suspect being cited for illegal advertising.
See that red? Yes. Expired.
Acting in the capacity of a contractor and displaying a license not issued to him. In addition to those misdemeanor citations, he was driving with an expired driver's license. Inside his truck, officers found what may be rock cocaine. That earned him a trip to jail, and his truck a trip to the impound yard.
No offense, nothing illegal on your license, okay, my check?
This suspect claimed to have a CSLB sting premonition.
Hey, I'm with the contractor state license for this undercover sting operation. I did have a little feeling about it. It's awesome. Oh man, I'm getting requested it. I just knew it. I honestly knew it.
Those business cards have been out there a while. Okay. And they are in major supply houses. That one I think came from Ferguson over here on Fighting Fork. So you need to go back to those places and get those cards, any place you have.
The final set of the day needed a little help from officers getting inside the Sting home. Once inside, he received his citation for acting in the capacity of a contractor without a license and requesting an excessive down payment.
I hope you enjoyed that very informative video. And everybody heard of DOJ, you know. We got an EOJ, enforcement on the job. High tech, high tech. That's good. Thank you, Dave, for, and also Rick, for capturing those moments. If you go to agenda item F2, it's in your packet there. And I know that the board members had it in their packet, and I know that they're familiar with it. It's review and approval of disclosure by CSLB of partnering agencies' disciplinary action. As part of the strategic plan, the board is being asked to approve expanding its disclosure of a partnering agency's administrative action by including an electronic link on CSLB website. Disclosure of administrative action will only be upon verification Am I on now? No. Chief folks and Chief of Information Technology, Roger.
First one, the potential labor code violation that's available on DIR's website. Generally, that's for a contractor that hasn't been paying wages. We call them QAPAs, or civil wage and penalty assessments. But there was so much excitement about that they called a meeting in LA, and we had airport authorities, school districts, DAs, 30 to 40 different public agencies were represented, and they suggested that we expand it and that we include stop notices, and these would generally be issued by Caltrans, public information readily available. We have other public contract code violations that are assessed and they're public by awarding agencies. We could also disclose those. Orange County and the LADA's office were represented at that meeting, and they would like to provide a special link or a method for us to link to their website to disclose their violation. And then finally, a debarment by any public agency. We've already taken action on all of the contractors debarred by the Labor Commissioner, but it's not uncommon that the local jurisdiction or the city of San Jose, just use an example, would debar a contractor. The other cities and other jurisdictions are not aware of it, and so we would like to place that information on the CSLB record. And please keep in mind that we're not making the allegation, we're simply providing information to the public where they can go to seek that information. And that information would be available until such time as our partnering government agency removes it from their website. So I've been working very closely with Raju Saw regarding the programming, and I'm having a really tough time understanding the programming. So would you mind saying a few words about how we can implement this?
All right, I got it on. So David and I, along with our staff, met a couple of times to how to get this information out. We wanted to make sure this information was available on the website as well as the call center, as well as our IVR, so all the various ways we inform our public. So we've met a couple times and along with our staff and strategized, and we have, out of these 5 items, we're going to go ahead and move forward with the first 2. We've already looked at the codes and how to do that, and within the 30 days, we should be able to implement the first 2, and upon successful completion of that, we'll do the remaining 3. So without getting into the code language here, unless somebody wants to know the codes, we have looked at doing the first 2 in the next 30 days. Any questions? Yes. Yes.
Sorry, I have a question. On 1, 3, 4, and 5, all of those are issues that are prompted by an awarding agency actually having a problem with the contractor or subcontractor. Stop notices are issued by Caltrans when a subcontractor comes in and says, you know, I have a problem with the contractor, you know, and they file the papers to do a stop notice, and there may actually be no legitimate reason for that stop notice being filed, and there's a process that goes through, and it's not filed by Caltrans. I mean, there are times, I can't think of a time when Caltrans initiates a stop notice for a problem that it has, because what it does is withhold payments from its contractors when it has a problem. So Caltrans does not actually issue stop notices on its own account. It issues stop notices when somebody who's working for that contractor makes a complaint. There's no substantiation for that complaint at that moment in time. It may or may not turn out to be a legitimate complaint, and that's, I just see that different than these other 4 awarding agencies are actually issuing these things for they're initiating the action. They have a labor code violation or a criminal deal. So I'm just wondering,
Dave, would
whether
you
it should be
speak on that, please?
facilitating that.
Yes, well, that's, I would suggest that we research that further. We have met with Angela Schell, who's the contract compliance chief for Caltrans, and that was her suggestion, but let's meet with her and see if that's appropriate, and if we can change the language or do something with that number 2. But I would suggest then that we substitute number 5 for the second one, Raju, if that would be possible. And we focus on getting those disclosures up in the next 30 days.
Yes.
And then we can come back to the board and talk about Caltrans and the stop notices at that time.
And I'd be willing to attend any meetings or try to help out any way I
We
can.
would appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay, Madam Chair. John? Okay. I would put forth a motion to ask to expand, to approve to expand the disclosure of a partnering agency's administrative action by including an administrative link on the CSLB website. I'm not sure that's going to be excluding 4 or just leave it at just excluding 2.
Well, I think with the understanding that we're going to go back to Caltrans regarding the second one and have additional criteria to ensure that we would only link to them if it's appropriate.
Okay. Excluding 2 unless the language cannot be worked out. That's my motion.
Second.
It's been moved. Sorry about that. Is there any discussion before we take a vote?
I just wanted clarification. I think Dave said he was going for 1 and 5, but I think the motion is for 1, 3, 4, and 5.
If I could make a request, I would like to work with IT to disclose up to 10 complaints for number 1 and number 5 within the next 30 days. And then we will revisit number 2 and work with IT to disclose, I guess it would be 3 and 4. So the motion would be to approve us to move forward on all 5, disclosing number 1 and number 5 within the next 30 days, and then coming back to the board to discuss number 2.
So as amended?
I made my motion to include all 5. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just have.
I'm sorry, was there, Don, did you have something?
Just public comment.
Yeah. Is there any public comment, please? Yes, Pastor?
I just wanted to make a comment that I'm really happy to see this motion, and I really think this is a step in the right direction, particularly for transparency for consumers to be able to really find out who they're really hiring to do a job. And I commend again the staff, because I think this is really a very, very good piece of information that consumers should have when they make a decision.
Thank you. Anyone else? So it's been moved and seconded per the joint recommendation as stated by David Folk and Ed Lang. And all those in favor, please voice your opinion by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Yeah. Chair recognizes Registrar Steve Sands.
I just want to make sure the board notes something. David spoke earlier about the Public Works program that we initiated. It's getting more and more successful, and we just adopted a motion that will allow us to disclose these projects. And Matt Kelly can attest to this. He's been on the board for like 11 years, but this is, you know, we didn't have any of this 10 years ago. Industry's been complaining about public works violations and all sorts of issues, and we've been hearing from labor about, you know, debarment, and Dave Folk took the leadership to, you know, put this all together. No other board even thinks about this kind of stuff. I mean, we're so unique in so many areas, but no one works with public agencies. No one has such a breadth of scope of influence in this state as much as this board. And Dave is to be commended, because without Dave, we wouldn't have any public works program. We wouldn't have this disclosure, something that people have been asking us to deal with for a long time. It took us a while to figure it out, but we finally did it. And this is something the board will remember for years. One of its greatest accomplishments, I think.
Paul.
You know, from a contractor's perspective, it really is a game changer. And it'll change the whole process. And so what you guys did, I agree with what Steve said. 10 years from now, we're going to look back as this as being a very big change in what we did to protect consumers by using the website, using the internet, and giving them all the information they need to select the right contractors. So I think it's fantastic. I just think you guys did great.
Madam Chair, that ends the enforcement report.
Thank you. Now we'll move to agenda item G, the Public Affairs Committee report. And Rick Lopes and Pastor Herrera Jr. will give us the Public Affairs Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone, and welcome to the new members of our Contractor State License Board. We have a very, very, I think, game changer also in our Public Affairs unit. They've been very, very busy this past summer. I'm just going to provide you some of the highlights, and Rick will give you some of the details of the report. One of the first things I like to note that wasn't really detailed very much in the report is I think the Public Affairs unit is going Hollywood now. They are starting or they're looking into a reality TV show that we discussed previously at some of our board meetings, and they're going to try to finalize this to make it a reality by a program called Catch a Contractor. Or is it Catch the Bad Guy and the Good Guy? Huh? But whatever, but Rick will give you a little bit more updates on that. Also, as you read in your packet, the staff have been working on the website that is available to the public, and also the employee intranet, which also is going to be revised. And of course, as we know, technology is such in a state of flux now that we need to make these changes to be responsive to whoever's looking at it. So Rick will also give you additional information. Also in the report, it did mention partnership, another partnership with the insurance industry, and Contractor State License Board to do an outreach program to the Hispanic community on hiring a contractor, a licensed contractor. That's definitely very much a need, and I do think also that there is a need to educate the community, particularly the Hispanic community, about the issue of unlicensed contracting. Also, you will note a whole listing of senior scam stopper seminars that have been taking place throughout the state. There's quite a number. They've been very, very effective in educating not only seniors, but the community at large, and how to not be defrauded not only by contractors, but a lot of other scams that exist in our community. One note, Jane, who really kind of coordinates those workshops, in one 11-day period, she coordinated 9 different of these workshops in 9 different cities throughout the state. So that's really commendable, and we commend her for that, and your staff, Rick. Just a couple of other highlights. You saw, I think, some of the new video equipment that was used by the staff in some of the videos that you saw today. Also, there's a whole slew of different press releases that were issued, and also some of those were picked up by local press. We're not going to quiz you on those, but if you have the time, please look at those and review them. The other good thing is that the unit is fully staffed, which really makes a difference, I think, in what they're able to do in their work. Rick, you want to take it away?
Sure, thanks, Pastor. It is not in the book, but I can bring the board just briefly up to date. We've talked for the last number of years in various different realms about a reality TV show. We've had, in the past few years, a number of different production companies that have come to us asking for our assistance in helping to develop a show. We even had one of the companies came and spoke at a board meeting 2 or 3 years ago down in Norwalk. None of those shows ever came to fruition, but actually, and probably the reason it was successful, is a production company started down the road before they came to us. And so maybe the fact that we weren't involved in the very front end maybe helped them succeed. But they've got a contract. They've already produced a pilot episode, and the show has been picked up by Spike TV. So they've ordered the first season of shows. The show is not going to be based on CSLB or our personnel. Other shows in the past, we're looking to be focused on that. This one is going to be focused more on consumer victims of either, unscrupulous licensees or unlicensed contractors. What they've done is we've reached out to them, and they have equally reached back to us and are looking for our assistance to identify potential victims to be able to be in the show. And the basic premise of the show is they've got somebody who's been victimized, who's got either a partially completed job or some state of disarray on a job that was done not very well, and it's put them out. In one case that we've already given to them, it was a fire in a house, and it's been the better part of, I believe, 1.5 years now that people have not been able to move back in their house. And they've had family members living with different family members and friends, so the family isn't even living together now. And so what they do is they have their own licensed contractors they're working with, and the show kind of highlights the fact is not only are they trying to help them out, they're actually going in and doing the work and giving them the finished job, or at least a portion of the job, depending on how much the damage was. So right now, again, we are in the process of working with our intake mediation centers, our investigative centers, trying to identify some cases. We've already given them one good one. We've got another couple ones in the hopper that we're kind of writing up and ready to present to them. But they are very excited about the first one they're going to use. And we've also used it as an opportunity to present our educational messages and to be sure that what they mention in the show is they talk about a lot of our points. The importance of hiring licensed contractors, the importance of down payments and not letting your payments get ahead of the work, and all the different educational things. So they've been very receptive and appreciative for us reaching out to them and giving us our input. And we think as the show goes on, there's even going to be opportunities, depending on the case. There may be a situation that warrants getting our staff involved in possibly setting up a sting, or maybe working with local prosecutors or local police to try to get somebody under arrest, and that certainly could work itself into the show. It hasn't yet, but they're willing and able to allow us to be part of that if those situations kind of come up. So that's what the status is right now. They're looking at, I believe there's the show's starting to air this fall, so we'll keep everybody updated as we learn more. By the way, the host of the show is somebody that is fairly well known, was a TV guy, then a radio guy, now he's got one of the most popular podcasts, a guy named Adam Carolla. He is actually was never a licensee of ours, but did work for contractors and has some experience on doing that. And he's a comedian kind of guy, and so I think that's going to help to the bringing people to actually tune in and watch the show because he's a fairly well-known name. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get into the rest of the program update. On page 1, as Pastor noted, is we are now working with the IT folks on developing a new look and feel to our website. And what you see is the pictures there. The upper picture is what the current website looks like. The bottom picture is not what the new website will look like. This is actually the main California website. But if you can see kind of the graphics and the look of it, it's going to follow that kind of a graphic look. The most important thing about the new look and feel is a lot of things that you're not going to see. The new website is going to be a lot more adaptable to tablets, to mobiles, to smartphones. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we have to manually do now that this new website, the stuff we don't see, is actually going to make our site more usable for people in all the variety of ways that they can get us online. So we're working with IT on that. Over on page 2, the one actually this project is a little bit ahead of it, is we're actually looking we do have an intranet site which is for CSLB employees, which we have access to just in CSLB offices around the state. You can see the graphic to the left there is the current intranet site, which has kind of looked that way for, I think, as long as I've been here with the board. So this is the first time it's gone through a redesign in a long time. The graphic you see to the left is kind of a draft of what the new intranet site is going to look like. And it's going to have some new features and things that we're excited about. Again, we're working closely with the IT folks, and Rose Avila from our staff is done the design and a lot of the HTML coding and building, and she's done a great job. And so we hope to see that site be able to launch this fall. On the bottom of page 2 is the information about our application instructional video. This was a video that we launched last August to try to cut down the number of rejections of original applications that come into the board. And so the graph you see there, I wanted to be sure the board is real clear because I know the graph was brought up during public comment. This graph actually is just the rejection rate for people turning in an application. This has nothing to do on whether the people ultimately get their license. This graph is entirely just when an application comes in the door for the first time, do we have to reject it because they didn't sign their name, they didn't put their experience on there, they didn't do something, that there's some problem with the exam, we reject it, it goes back, and they fix it. So I just wanted to be sure the board's clear on just what these stats represent. But it also is a little disconcerting to us because the numbers have jumped. We'd kind of seen that kind of bouncing trend since the video launched, and we're going to keep kind of watching this. We're not sure why. The people watching it, the number of times it's been viewed continues to increase, so we're not sure if there's any correlation of what the reason is for the jump. But we'll keep an eye on that. Page 3 is the social media update. The likes and the follows continue to grow as we continue expanding on the presentations we're giving on our social media. On page 4 is the latest email alert features. This is where people can sign up to get various different email alerts from us. Those numbers continue to grow. In the bottom of page 4, in the media calls section, you'll note that at the end of our report is a lot of the coverage which Pastor did refer to. I'm also going to be showing you a video in just a moment. I wanted to mention one of the, we do a lot of work, and a lot of times we get a lot of credit and much appreciated credit from the board for the work we do. But certainly our public affairs people can't do it alone. A lot of the outreach we do is with the assistance of the enforcement division. And a case in point was a press release we issued last week. We issue a press release after each sting operation we do. There was a sting operation here in the Sacramento area in Roseville. It was on Wednesday. On Thursday, we issued a press release in the mid-afternoon. One of the local TV stations called us up and they wanted to do an interview for it. So that was fine. So they came out here and we did the interview with them about 4 in the afternoon. And they said, can you help us find a victim? So here it is, Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Tom O'Hare from my staff and we immediately went upstairs, went into enforcement, and started walking around the cubicles and asking anybody if they had a case. And within a half hour, we had 2 cases. And we called the first one, and they said, yeah, they were willing to talk to the media. And And so I just wanted to point that out, is because what began as a simple press release that went out, ended up turning into an interview, ended up turning into a live shot with a long piece on the evening news that night, which was seen by tens of thousands of people. So I wanted to point it out to the board so they could, understand that while we do a lot of that thing, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes into that too. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to show the board that story, and we're going to hope this thing works this time. I'm going to have to actually grab it off of their website, so and hopefully we're not going to see a commercial here. But this was the story that ran last Thursday night on the Fox station here in town. Well, I'm going to probably have to reload the page, but I'm sorry, it's going to show a 30-second commercial. It's one of the drawbacks of having to get this off the web. So we'll kind of bear with the commercial here. They get a free plug on our web stream.
At Farmers, we make you smarter about insurance, because what you don't know can hurt you. What if you didn't know that it's smart to replace washing machine hoses every 5 years? What if you didn't know that you might need extra coverage for more expensive items? And what if you didn't know that teen drivers are 4 times more likely to get into an accident? So, the more you know, the better you can plan for what's ahead. Talk to Farmers and get smarter about your insurance.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Caught in the act and taking hard-earned cash right out of people's pockets who hired them. A sweep nets 8 counterfeit contractors in Roseville. Luana Munoz is live, and Luana, you spoke with a woman who was saving all she could when she was duped.
Yeah, she was devastated. So, Stephanie, this is what a good landscaping job is supposed to look like. Even flagstones all throughout. But that isn't always the case, especially when you're dealing with an unlicensed contractor. And according to one department, there's quite a few of them throughout California.
You know, for it not to be what I was picturing and what I envisioned, and then not to get any help from him to fix it, it was very, very devastating.
For 10 years, Michelle Buehler had been saving her money for the patio of her dreams. So when she was referred to a landscaper, she thought she'd get just that.
Well, I wanted a flagstone patio, and I understand I had that.
But after the landscaper cashed the more than $5,500 check he was given, Buehler's dream turned into a nightmare.
But the material, the joint material in between, it's not right, I guess, for the application, and it keeps washing away. Like I can hose it all away. It's making a mess.
She later learned the contractor she hired hadn't had a license since 1998. And Buehler wasn't the only one duped. In fact, the Contractors State License Board catches several unlicensed contractors a week.
Not all contractors are created equal, especially when you're talking about unlicensed contractors.
The statewide investigative fraud team most recently arrested 8 people in Roseville posing as licensed contractors who claimed they could do everything from flooring to paint jobs.
Just because they can give you the cheapest job doesn't mean they're going to do the best job or the best value for you.
The reason they're so cheap, often because of cheaper materials, and they have no overhead, like paying for insurance or licenses.
The sprinkler that he actually cemented in to the walkway here.
While Buehler's contractor was eventually fined, she still hasn't gotten her money's worth.
You're trusting of these people that, claim they can do this work for you, and, consumers need to do their due diligence.
Her only hope is to help others from being victimized. So how can you avoid this? Well, every licensed contractor is required to show their license number on every advertisement. It's a 5- to 6-digit number. You can then take that number to the Contractors State Licensing Board, and make sure that it's actually valid. Eric?
All right, Luana, live for us tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so that's what ended up coming out of what was just a press release, and also the pictures that you saw were actual pictures taken by our enforcement staff at the sting.
At Farmers, we make you smarter about insurance, because what you don't know
they
can
took 3
hurt
still
you.
photos
at
at
that.
that.
Smart to replace washing machine.
During the sting operation, gave them to us, and we were able to distribute those to the media. So they were able to do a story based on something Public Affairs was never at. And anyway, I just wanted to publicly thank enforcement for their ongoing support of our efforts. And actually, now that everybody has sat back down, we are going to show a couple more videos. Sorry. On the top of page 5, we did conduct a media event as well. 3 times a year, the enforcement... No, we actually do have 2 videos to show now. The Enforcement Division conducts 3 different California blitzes every year. They average 1 sting somewhere in California every week, but 3 times a year they come together and they do simultaneous stings in cities around the state. And so I wanted to highlight some of the media coverage that came after the summer blitz, which was held in July. Sacramento was one of the locations, and so we ended up having a press conference there. The first story I'm going to show you is the result of a station that came to that press conference. The second story is going to be a result of how we're able to utilize our new video equipment and technology. The second story was done by a station that took video that we put up online and made available to them. So we shot every frame of video that they used in their entire story. They never called us, we had no part in their actual story itself. But it just shows that with technology now and how we're able to utilize it, that we can actually get coverage when we never actually specifically deal with the media. So we're gonna hope that these both work.
Investigators say it's like fishing in a barrel.
Of course, this is the station that actually covered the press
contractors
conference.
busted in a statewide sting, and new at 6. Curtis Ming with the arrests and what you should ask before letting a contractor inside your home.
Well, Shannon, as the economy improves, more people may fix problems with their homes or they may be remodeling. But you got to be careful who you let inside your home. Case in point, when you hear who was caught during this sting.
We took everything out. Take everything out. The ring. And that's 12,000. Yeah.
Caught red-handed breaking the law. These guys have no idea they're chatting with an undercover investigator.
Can you get your hands on the top of your head? Are you kidding me?
No, sir. This is an undercover sting operation.
Over a 2-day period, the Contractors Board held stings statewide, arresting 79 people for being unlicensed, 12 in South Lake Tahoe, 11 in Sacramento.
Oh, have you ever been arrested?
No, I have.
Investigators say they caught an attempted murderer, sex offender, and people with drugs. A risky run with someone unlicensed.
And you're going to have them around your valuables, you're going to have them potentially around your kids.
So what does a licensed contractor have to go through? They must pass a criminal background check, have training, pass exams, and put up bond money you could tap into in case something goes wrong.
You can see that this is very uneven here.
Mike Crossan of El Dorado Hills is wishing he had access to that money right now. His unlicensed contractor did shoddy work on a walkway, collected $1,500 and vanished.
It'll be the last time I use an unlicensed contractor from Craigslist for sure.
You're going to hear more on his story tonight on the CBS 13 News at 10. Investigators say most of the people caught advertised on Craigslist. A contractor needs a license for any job above $500, and by law, contractors must post their license number in ads, including ads on Craigslist. You can then confirm that number through the Contractor State License Board's webpage.
Okay, a good reminder for us to do our homework, too. Curtis,
Okay, so
thanks.
again, that was the station that actually covered it. And the one thing they didn't include in that story is we actually had a licensed contractor who was there with us who was great. And I think their story they ran later that night included that. But then I'm going to go ahead and show you the story that, again, this is a station that never called us, that never came to the press
And
conference.
now unlicensed contractors caught on camera in a statewide sting.
Yeah, I'm not trying to violate the law.
No, but if you had a license. Am I being arrested? A state fraud team looking for unlicensed contractors shot this video. They've arrested 79 people, 11 of them in Sacramento and 12.
That's not good. Oh, you know, let's try that again. Well, you know, it's going to be one of those days. But anyway, what you could just kind of watch it and I can just basically describe. We don't need to hold all the details again. What we did is the press conference that we held that morning, we actually shot videotape of that and then put that online. And so the station, not only did they download the video from the sting itself, they downloaded the video we shot of our own press conference. And so they actually used, not that you need to hear more interviews with me, but we actually hear more interviews and the things that we actually presented to them. So, okay, we're done with video now.
Unlicensed contractors from around the state, neighborhood carpenters.
Okay, too late. Okay. Thank you. Great, so we'll move on page 5, and Pastor did mention this, but I'll just give you a little bit more information on the Hispanic News Media campaign. Melanie Bedwell from our staff kind of headed this up for us, working with the Insurance Information Network of California and the National Insurance Crime Bureau. The groups actually came to us and said they were interested in doing an outreach to Spanish language media around the state and asked if we'd be interested. We said, of course we would. And so we partnered with them and did, as you can see there, I won't go through all the details, but we did a number of interviews and meetings with media in Los Angeles, San Diego, Sacramento, and San Francisco and San Jose. And so you see the results of that on page 5. Moving over to page 7, one of the videos that we saw earlier that actually played well was the sting operation down in Culver City. And there you get details for that. As far as the publications, I wanted to draw the board's attention to a couple of the new items that we've just released, and actually I'll pass them out to board members. Our new 10 tips card, which is one of our real basic outreach things that we give out, thousands of them. They're English on one side, Spanish on the other side. That's newly designed. Another one that we made it kind of a mock-up, is the new licensee wall certificate. So when our licensees get their license, they actually get a certificate. So they don't come in a frame, but we wanted to go ahead and give you an idea of what that looks like. We'll pass it around to the board members, anybody in the public who would like to see that as well. Rose Avila from our team worked on that, and also we had some assistance from one of our part-time folks. It helped us with the 10 tips card. On page 8 is more of the information on the senior scam stoppers, which Pastor also talked about. It was funny when you actually go through and you see how close these dates are. Pastor mentioned that Jane conducted 9 within 11 days, and if you go down a little further, it comes out that she conducted 15 of these within 18 days. So she was on the road, a great deal over the last couple of months. And today she's actually down in Rolling Hills Estates conducting a seminar as we speak.
Rick, could I just make a comment? As a side note also, because these are partnerships with the elected officials, the state elected officials, so many times they have their media person there that brings in the media to the event, which is a great opportunity not only for exposure concerning the seminars, but also gives additional information on what we're doing. Contractor State License Board is doing to educate the public on the whole issue of unlicensed contracting.
We can also should note that the Pastor has been at a number of the events in Southern California. I know that Kevin joined us in San Jose last month too, so he's gotten his baptism into this, and we'd invite any of the other board members, if we're doing any in the areas, or if you have any interest in attending, we'd be happy to have you join us as well.
And as a board member that's attended them whenever I'm able to, I can tell you that whatever area you live in, the seniors that show up to these scam stoppers, the members of the public, there's no better public relations for this body than to have a board member there to then be able to talk with those individuals and let them know that, you know what, the people that are preying on seniors, preying on elderly people are of great concern to this board, and we're very interested in making sure that those individuals are arrested and dealt with properly. Again, public relations effort by this board. Board members should always be there. Talk with the public, let them know. It means a great deal to them, I'm sure.
Thank you. And with that, that concludes our program update.
Just as a follow-up on and piggyback on what Matt said, it's this shows just how we partner so well with the, as you can see just by Rick's report, the press, media, but also with the legislature. I mean, nine meetings or 9 senior scam stoppers in 11 days. And if you look at page 8 and 9, then the legislative folks that are showing up, what they're doing, it's you know, a free message and promotes our mission. And it's consistent with what all the other departments do with David's shop and the partnering that we do with other agencies. And I think this is something that we do very well in each of the departments. I'm going to say at this time we're moving really well through the agenda. Before I ask for a short break of 5 minutes only, are there any other comments from board members or the public with regard to agenda item D?
Yes, sir.
Come to the podium and state your name again, please.
Thank you.
And this is with
Yes. In
agenda
regards to
item
page
G.
2, the graph, my name is Daniel Cohen. I would like to mention, I think there's a little bit of confusion. Specifically, what I was referring to are applications being rejected. So this graph is 100% accurate as to how many applications, and it shows that the applications are being rejected. What Mr. Lopes referred to were license denials. That's separate. What is occurring and what I have spoken about are they are rejecting the application and not even giving the contractors the ability to have the license denied. So this is correct, this graph. And I would also like to comment quickly that if it was factored into this graph, the number of people who voluntarily withdrew their applications, it may indeed be quite a bit higher. Thank you very much.
I think at this time, Karen Robinson would like to address the board.
Sure, I'll comment on this. And just to clarify, what Rick Lopes was speaking to is not license denials. He's talking about application rejections. And you're right, Mr. Cohen, it does coincide with our additional experience verification. But just for the board's information, in the past, we didn't reject applications for experience verification. We posted them and we sent them to enforcement for formal investigation. So they would never show up as a reject. They would show posted, gone on to enforcement. Because David's group has a lot to do, we thought, and I'll comment more on this in my report, that a more efficient way would be for us in licensing to get that additional information. Well, when we request additional information, it's posted as a reject until we get the information back. We can request this information and hopefully get it back in 30 days. A formal investigation can take several months. So it was intended to be a more efficient process, but it actually means that we have to post it as a reject when we ask for that additional information. It has nothing to do with denials. Denials, those are done by enforcement. Those are not done in licensing. They're forwarded over to enforcement. So although I'll go into this experience verification process more in my report, just to clarify that yes, the reject rate did coincide with this additional verification, but only because we're asking for it from licensing, so we have to list it as a reject anytime we ask for anything additional.
Okay. Hopefully that cleared that up for you, and we'll...
Yes, it did. Thank you
all
very
right,
much.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a short recess, 5 minutes, so we'll resume at 10 minutes to the hour. It's so much better than a hammer. I just... All right. Where are we? So let's move to agenda item H, and that's the Legislative Committee report with Paul Schiaffino, our Leg Chair, and Laura Zuniga, Chief of Legislation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, legislation being the most exciting of the 4 divisions of the CSLB has you know, Rick came and asked us if we could do some videos, but we politely turned him down because we thought it might be too exciting for everybody. Laura's awesome to work with, so I don't really have much to do here. What Laura did was, and I thought it was a wonderful separation, she included in the packet our sponsored legislation. Now, the sponsored legislation, just to state the obvious, but sometimes it doesn't hurt, just in case, in large part comes from staff, it comes from consumers, and we take that input and we approach the legislature with the hope of fixing the system a bit. And so in the packet is a sponsored legislation. She also gave a handout that includes the legislation that is not sponsored by the CSLB, but it's legislation that we want to keep an eye on. We may support it, we may oppose it, we may keep an eye on it. Laura, please have at it and catch everybody up.
Thank you. As Paul mentioned, I
gave each of you separate from the board packet, but just an update on the legislation that the board has discussed at previous meetings. So I'm not going to go over that unless there are any questions. But then the first page of the legislative update in the packet is our sponsored legislation. And we sponsored 4 bills this year. And on a positive note, 2 of our bills have been signed by the governor, SB 261 and 262. But our other 2 bills did not make it to the governor, and so they're going to be 2-year bills, and we're continuing to work on them. Both of the bills have issues related to them that we will try to work out in the, during the fall recess of the legislature. So AB 993 is our arbitration bill that we need to try to resolve some issues raised by the judiciary committees. And SB 263 by Senator Monning relates to Business and Professions Code Section 7031 and disgorgement. We also need to address issues raised by the judiciary committee. And then finally, we also have a provision in an omnibus bill. And that bill is not yet on the governor's desk, but we expect to be signed this year. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have one question, if I could. And I know it's not a function of this body, but I promised the individuals that spoke with me about it that I would bring it up. And it falls under your review of license suspension chart.
Yes.
And it is at the top of page 2 in that section, the failure to maintain a current contractor bond on file. 24,528 license suspensions have occurred for that. And it is a result of the way a bond is calculated for a small contractor. I've spoken with both a B contractor and a specialty C contractor, and they claim that their bonds went from less than $1,000 to much more, 3 times, 4 times that in, less than a year. So I just wanted to make sure that I asked about it and had the opportunity to let you know that at least I've spoken to 2 individuals that are contractors that have an issue with it. I explained to them that the license board does not regulate the way the bond industry figures things out, but it is an industry problem if we've got 24,000 plus people having their licenses, failing to renew their licenses or having their licenses suspended because of it. So wanted to make sure it was known.
Yeah, I'll address part of it. There's 2 separate issues there, but that Surety of the Pacific was sold to another company a few years ago. They're the largest surety bond company in the state, and they never underwrote, and the new company began underwriting the contractor, and that caused contractors with different credit ratings to be charged more to pay for the $12,500 bond. So that's the reason. We worked with the Department of Insurance. We asked the Department of Insurance about that. We did a lot of research a few years ago, and I think we actually put something on our website explaining what had happened. But Matt's right. We don't regulate the surety bond industry. That's the Department of Insurance, and all we could really do was, inform the contractors of why it's happening. Karen, you have anything? I mean, it's 24. Why else would a bond cause a license to be suspended?
Well, it would be a bond cancellation or failure to renew the bond. If we get a notice from the surety company that the bond has been canceled or not renewed, that would cause suspension. But I think you summarized very well what has happened, what we've seen in the last few years.
Thanks.
Okay. So that leads us to the second item in the update, which is this chart. And this was something that someone in the industry asked the board to work on. They kind of provided a template, and so we filled out the information with the help of Karen and David's staff. So it's supposed to reflect the ways in which a licensed contractor can have a problem with their license when they do something wrong, and then what the effect on their license is. And the reason they asked for the chart is under 7031, if there's any type of issue with your license that results in a suspension, which could be for 1 day or any type of lapse in your licensure, you could lose out on all payment for work performed. So they wanted to look at different types of violations and what the penalties were to show that that seems to be a very different type of penalty than exists under other provisions of law. So we've put together this chart for the board to look at, and if the board is comfortable with it, we can distribute this to the industry and use this as kind of the next step in our discussions on SB 263 to see if we can reach any type of consensus on a way to move forward on that issue. And I did already get some comments from Pastor on some suggested change we could make to make this a little bit more easy to understand.
Question. Once this is finalized, is this something that would be appropriate to have a link on our website in terms of being a reminder and an informative thing for our 300,000 contractors?
If the board would like us, we absolutely could.
Not a bad idea.
I mean, it's really well laid out and, yeah, for further fodder and discussion.
Laura, I did have one question, just a clarification. You mentioned that the disgorgement issue was, and just to clarify, it's disgorgement of, even if it's suspended for a day, it's disgorgement of any project that you have under contract at that time. And it's the entire, anything you've been paid in the past, it's the whole kit and caboodle would be disgorged back to the general contractor if you're a sub, or general contractor to the owner if you're, as the case may be.
That's all for legislation.
Okay, so that concludes legislative report. Agenda item I, licensing committee report. Karen Robinson will give us the licensing committee report.
Thank you. With all due respect to Mr. Shafino, licensing is actually the most exciting division. Well, for a change, after years of doom and gloom, it looks like applications are a little bit on the rise. So maybe we finally turned a corner. The first couple of pages, you'll see the charts we always provide. But if you look at, and of course, we're only a couple months into this current fiscal year, but we're seeing a little bit of an uptick. And if you turn to page 2 and look at July for total number of apps received per month and compare that to the last 2 years, we're on the rise. So that's good news. Now, not such good news, limited liability companies. We are processing those applications. We've received over 1,100 applications since we implemented the program, but we're still seeing a high reject rate, mostly due to records at Secretary of State not corresponding to what they've put on the app. So we continue to try to get the word out and work with them so they understand that their statement of information with Secretary of State must match what they submit to us. So hopefully, over time, perhaps we'll see an improvement there. On page 5 and 6 is information about the workers' comp insurance recertification. As you know, we started that with the licenses that expired this past March. You'll see a chart that shows the renewal applications mailed each month, and it shows those that require recertification, meaning they have a workers' comp exemption on file, as opposed to those that don't require recertification, meaning that they have workers' comp policy in place. Then on the following page, we have the stats, and I apologize, I don't know what happened when this printed, but underneath each of those charts should be months, and it should be March, April, May, June, and July. But it shows the number, and also the wording got cut off with copying apparently. It's recertifications rejected and recertifications processed. So your green chart are those that sent it back in, said, yeah, I'm still exempt from workers' comp, and they signed the certification. The red are those that failed to do so, and we had to reject them. Page 7 is just the disposition of application reports. We just report on, by years, we go back about 10 years, showing that what happened to every app that came in the door. It's either been issued, voided, or it's still pending for some reason. Page 9 is the fingerprint criminal background unit report, just the usual stats, the total numbers that we've printed, how many rap sheets we've received back, our number of denials, and our probationary license issued. The Licensing Information Center, and again, sorry, I have an update for you. I'm not sure exactly how this happened, but if you look at the Licensing Information Call Center data for May, the average wait time really should be 1 minute 58 seconds, and for June, 48 seconds. So I don't know if last year's numbers somehow got in there instead of the correct ones, but, and then July is 1 minute and 2 seconds. So the call center is doing a fantastic job on responding to those calls in a very short time period. Moving on, we have our judgment unit, which handles all outstanding liabilities, judgments, bond payment of claims, and we've broken it down by outstanding liabilities. Those are like EDDs, notification, or franchise tax board, you know, a liability of that sense. So you've got the numbers that we've received, how many we suspended and reinstated, and then the total numbers. Same with judgments and bond payment of claims, and then at the bottom of page 15, you've got the total savings to the public when we add all of those in, how much money we have assisted in collecting for those different groups. Pages 16, 17, and 18 just show our weeks to process for various applications and documents. They've stayed relatively steady. You'll see some peak months, for example, like renewals, we jumped way up in July. It's basically kind of based on staffing issues. It's still within a reasonable time period, but we watch these flows so that we can redirect staff to address any spikes that we see. Summer's always a harder time because we have a lot of staff on vacation out of the office. And then finally, and we've had a lot of discussion about this morning, the experience verification process that the licensing unit implemented, 4 or 6 months ago. First, let me just say that this process was implemented to streamline and expedite the licensing of applicants. We were looking for a way that we didn't have to refer these applications for a formal investigation, which can take several months. So we were looking at some way to get this information in more quickly in the licensing division when we had questions about the investigation. Thanks to Mr. Cohen, who brought to our attention at the last meeting that perhaps our letter asking for certain verification was a little too narrow. We revised the letters. We added more avenues for applicants to provide that information to us. But it appears from the comments this morning that perhaps this process isn't, well, I think it's working the way it should be, but perhaps there are still some concerns or questions about it. So we will...
Can I ask you a question? Are you saying that the new process basically skips a step but achieves the same statistics?
Yeah, in the past, when we had questions about experience, someone submitted their work experience certification and we had questions about it. Say it was self-employed or it wasn't working and it was in a critical class or it wasn't working for a licensed contractor. Our option in the past was to post the application and send it over to enforcement to open up a formal case.
Now, is this the event of a qualifier? Is that what you're addressing? Somebody saying
yes,
they have some experience and yada, yada, okay.
Exactly. This is for the person who's saying, I have 4 years of journey level experience in this trade, and they submit a work certification. That's what's required. If it's somebody who's worked, was working for a licensed contractor in that trade and it's verified, not a problem. You know, that's easy to verify. In some instances, it's certified, say, by a business associate or someone who just knows them and he's claiming self-employed. I did this self-employed. We may want additional information like, you know, how about a permit for the project that you did, or, you know, do you have W-2s, or do you have 1099s, or do you have, you know, any variety of documentation that you can provide to support that experience.
So is this then, and I don't mean this to just be about you and me, but.
No.
So is this then, is the real question here then, when somebody applies and they're saying they have this experience, but they have not worked for someone else?
Correct.
By definition, it means, I think, they were unlicensed contracting.
Correct.
So the question is, as a board, are we then saying to these people, send in all of your unlicensed verification work and we're gonna give you a license?
Yes.
Okay, just trying to understand.
Yes, and we have accepted experience that, yeah, was not gained legally, but if they can show that they had the 4 years of journey level experience in that trade, we will accept it. The bottom line is we want these people to be licensed, and we want them to be licensed as quickly as possible. That's why we instituted this new process, so that if we have questions, we can kind of handle it at the lowest level without having to go to a formal investigation.
Would it be possible, if I were applying for this application, I would be a little nervous going in front of the CSAB and saying, oh yeah, I've been cheating for the last 10 years, can I have a license please?
Yeah.
If we're behind the scenes saying with a straight face, we're good. As long as you come in and get your license, we're okay with that. Should we say that?
We do say that.
And we say, we don't care if
I
it's
don't think we publish it on our website, but as long as I've been here, we have always said, if you have the experience, even if it's obtained in, you know, unlicensed, we will still accept it, because again, our goal is to get these people licensed.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, the little letter that this gentleman showed us, should we be saying that in the letter? You know, provide us with work experience, we don't care if it was unlicensed. I mean, should we just try and take it off the plate? I just think people are gonna hide from it and deny it because they don't wanna get in trouble.
They do, and I know Rick has many conversations with applicants explaining to them, look, you know, we're not looking to, you know, mess you up with this experience. We want to get you licensed. You're not going to be prosecuted simply because you came to us and said, here's how I got the experience, and it may have been outside of the legal parameters.
Can I make a comment?
Bob.
I'd like to just say that we are the Contractor State License Board, and we are here licensing people to do construction in the state. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to work for licensed contractors. They may have done all kinds of work over the years. We even get people from out of state that have never been licensed because it's not a requirement in that state, but they do have the experience. So there are different ways that people come to California to get licensed as contractors in the state. My opinion is that they should be licensed. The level playing field is what we're all shooting for here as a board. And if they come to us or they are caught in several stings, after a while they finally get tired of hitting their head against the wall. And guess what? That means that things are working. I'm all for it.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Several years ago, there was an individual that came before this body who had been denied a C10 license. And he put up as experience the fact that he had installed and erected microphones at his church and sound systems for the plays that they conducted at their church. This board is charged with regulating contractors, and it's our job to verify their experience, because we are, again, charged with maintaining the integrity of contractors that work in our industry. And while it's difficult to maybe admit that I've worked illegally or I've worked without a license over the past several years, I think it's our job to make sure that we can verify that they have and that they do have the experience necessary to actually be a licensed contractor. So you know, whatever means necessary, I applaud the effort that you're you're putting forth, Karen. And I think that this board needs to maintain the fact that we are charged with making sure that we can verify the experience that these individuals have prior to giving them license.
Pastor?
Yeah, just another, and I believe, part of the process is, which is another check, is they have to still pass a written exam, right? So experience is one thing, but then they have to pass an exam still to further verify that they can do the job.
But there are people in this audience that will teach them how to pass that test. So their experience is limited compared to the amount of experience that's necessary to pass the test.
Well, that's not true, though. You can waive in and not take the test.
Under very limited circumstances. Overall, no, we wouldn't waive the exam for somebody who doesn't already hold the class. There are limited situations where we might waive an exam.
Understood.
Okay, so, again, I'm sure we'll hear more about this process, and we'll discuss it at the licensing committee meeting. But other than that, that ends the licensing portion. Unless there are any questions, Heidi's going to give us the testing program update.
I'm sorry. Oh, hold on, Heidi. Yes, somebody from the public do you want to come up to the podium?
Service, and I used to work here. I just want to address Mr. Kelly's comment about there are people in the audience that will teach people how to take the test or pass the test. That's incorrect. We teach people how to take the test, not how to pass the test. We don't provide them answers. They have to have the trade knowledge to be able to pass the exam. Now, having worked here for 5 years and in the licensing industry for 8, I could create an application and have somebody sign it that would probably get through the system, unless I was asked for more documentation. But I don't have the experience, even after using my own study materials, to be able to pass the exam. So the materials that we provide in our industry don't allow people or make people pass the test. They still have to have the background information. So passing the test, I believe, should be the key criteria for whether or not somebody should be licensed. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, John O'Rourke.
Just a question, Karen. What percentage of the applications are pulled as it relates to verification of work experience?
Well, we're required to pull a minimum of 3%. To be perfectly honest, John, I don't know off the top of my head. We're probably doing, what would you say, Rick, maybe about 5% of the applications? So it's not, and we're required to do 3% of a minimum of 3 for a field investigation, meaning we refer them to enforcement and they do a full-blown field investigation. A very small percentage above that, we're just asking for additional documentation. It's not a formal investigation. It's not going to lead to denial. They're going to have the opportunity to provide additional information. If they don't provide it, their application could go void, but they would not be denied like they might after a formal investigation.
Okay, and as a follow-up, it's my understanding that using the example that Matt Kelly brought up, on that applicant for that C10 license a number of years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he was 19 or 20 years old, and I think as a board we looked at it and said, there's no way you could have 4 years at the journey level in order to be seated to take that exam. So certain things must flag your attention.
It does, and what we call young journeyman is something that will flag our attention. And it's not to say a kid couldn't have started with his dad at 16 and worked at a journeyman level, or started at 14 and became a journeyman. We're not saying right off the bat it can't happen, but it's very, very unusual. And when you're talking about a critical class like a C10 license, that is a flag for us. We take that serious. There are, serious health and safety concerns to the public if we were to license somebody who doesn't have that sort of experience. So there are certain things that flag the tech's attention, and someone at 19 saying they have 4 years journey level experience, yeah, that's going to get our attention.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Cohen, we're going to make this short.
Yes, I'll be brief here. What is the difference between voiding an application and denying a license?
Voiding an application happens when an applicant doesn't provide whatever information we need. If we go to a full denial, if they appeal it, there's a hearing, and they are prevented from reapplying for a license for a minimum of 1 year.
Now, my follow-up question is, if an application is voided, are they afforded that opportunity to appeal it?
No, if it's voided, they could come back the next day and reapply.
But if it was the same application that they sent in, it would be voided again, correct?
If they didn't have the documentation needed to meet the experience requirement.
Okay, so under the current, what has been set up, people, their license, they can be denied a license, whether we call it voiding or using another word, but under this new system, they are not allowed to appeal it to another agency or to a higher forum, correct?
Excuse me, Karen,
Well-
I mean, how long does it take for you to void? Voiding means the applicant simply didn't follow the
right.
instructions and just, we're waiting for the applicant and he just never submits it, and after a certain period of time, okay, he's not interested. Denial is an active action by the board where we deny the application, they have due process rights. But that's the difference. Denial is a legal activity, voiding is just the applicant stopped the process, right?
So may I ask then, if they do not provide the documentation as you've requested, the application is voided?
Correct. If we don't hear back from that applicant, we give them a certain date to provide the information. If we don't hear back, we'll void the application.
So it seems to me like there's a hole in the system. The old system, which is established in the Business and Profession Code, allows for a comprehensive background field investigation, and if they are denied a license, there is an appeals process. Whereas this new system that has been adopted, if they do not provide this documentation or at the application exam unit level, they are denied a license, whether you call it voiding or not, they are denied a license, but there is no appeals process.
Well, it's not really a new process. We have the option to request any and all information necessary to review the application. It's no different. I realize we're asking for more documentation, but say you submitted an app, you didn't sign it or you didn't answer one of the questions and we rejected it and you never got back to us, we'd void you out.
I agree with that. My concern, though, is with the letters requesting additional documentation and then voiding them if they do not provide it. Whereas if it went through the formal application and investigation and they are denied a license, they receive that opportunity to appeal it.
Okay, your concern's noted, and I think
Thank
that
you.
we're going to
Thank you very much.
postpone further discussion until there's a licensing committee meeting. Kevin? Albany?
Yes, through the chair. If somebody is requested for more information, that person could certainly write a letter back saying, I don't have any, at which point it would go through the formal either denial or posting process. Is that right?
Well, if they wrote back and said they didn't have it, we would let them know if you can't provide it by this date, we'll void your application. Now, Kevin, to be perfectly honest, I don't know. I'd have to talk to legal counsel whether they could force it to become a denial. It's actually in the applicant's best interest, if they actually have the experience, to get it to us and not go to denial. Because as I mentioned, once you're denied, you can't even come back and apply for a minimum of a year. So once you're denied, you're out for a year at least.
Yeah, that seems to be the concern here. So is that something that we want to get a follow-up in terms of the two systems and how the former system worked and the system that we have now, how it is working, and schedule a committee meeting?
Yeah, can I make a suggestion? I mean, I think it'd be a good time just the licensing committee to review the whole application process. But if I might, it's up to the applicant to provide the information required in statute to be in order to qualify for a license. If the applicant doesn't provide the information, then he's not going to get licensed, and it's up to the applicant. It's his responsibility. If he doesn't do what he's told to do, then it's voided. If if they have the information, and for some reason we send it out to investigation, or he's got a criminal background and we deny it, then he has these legal rights to go to a hearing. They're two entirely separate
Right.
avenues. I mean, maybe we're not explaining it that well, but the staff understands it perfectly, and I think the applicants do. But I think this will be a good opportunity with new board members to let's just look at the application process again and update you and review it.
All right, if we're all in agreement here, we'll move the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Colin. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to provide the testing division update. On page 1, under our section, we have a graph of our number of examinations scheduled for the last 12 months, and examinations. Unlike in licensure, we don't see any uptick right yet in examinations, but we hope it's coming. So we lag a little bit behind as the applications get approved, then they trickle into the test center. So we'll be waiting for that here. On the next page, page 2, we have number of examinations scheduled by testing center. And you can see the various different test centers have different number of applicants in their test centers. With regard to staffing, we are on track to be fully staffed very soon. We have 2 vacancies in our exam administration unit, and we've selected employees, correct? For both those positions, and we're waiting for final approval, so we should be fully staffed there. And we're also moving forward with doing regular audits of our test centers that we had to suspend due to staffing for a long time. And so we have our new editor-auditor, we call her, and she's very good, and she's doing audits, and she's also writing procedures for our exam administration unit. So we're on track to be fully operational, as we always, it's been our vision to always be fully staffed and be able to do regular audits of our testing centers. With regard to examination development, we're business as usual there. We have completed recently occupational analyses for C5, framing and rough carpentry, C28, lock and security equipment, C38, refrigeration, C60, welding, and also a new exam for hazardous substance removal, and that's a certification. In progress, we have the B, C10, C13, fencing, C35, lath and plastering, occupational analysis in progress. We have new exams in progress for those ones that I mentioned that we just completed occupational analyses. And we're also, as we've been for a while, using email surveys and paper surveys to get information from our licensees to assist us with examination development. Most exciting new information is our new machine that we purchased. It's a mail folder inserter machine. It's a massive machine. We'll have a picture. We took a picture. It's going to be in the employee newsletter. Big machine, and it stuffs our occupational analysis surveys, which are about 30 pages stapled, and then a return envelope that the contractors send back to us. And this machine runs through and can stuff like 2,000 envelopes in a couple hours. And this, we have used it for the C35. We used it for our first job. We had some initial hiccups. We had to get the tech support people for the machine, the maintenance, to come out and recalibrate it several times. But we expect the next job is going to go smooth. And so it's really going to cut down our processing time to get these surveys out. We were contracting with the Office of State Publishing, and they were stuffing these by hand, and took 3 or 4 weeks for them to get out a few thousand of these packages, and now we can do that in 2 hours. So it's going to really cut the time that it takes for us to complete an occupational analysis. So, staffing and examination development unit, we're fully staffed. We recently hired a testing specialist, and she's going to be up to speed very soon. And then I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank Steve and Cindy for all their leadership during my time here at CSLB. I've learned a great deal working with CSLB board members and senior staff at CSLB, and learned how board meetings should be run. And I know I'm be going to some other board meetings in the future, so I'll remember that the way they should go is how they go here at CSLB. Also, it's just great to work with other people who have a passion and commitment to public protection. And CSLB is always a leader in innovation and technology, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to introduce you to my testing division management team. This is Wendy Balvance. She's in charge of exam development. And Natalie Chernick, she's in charge of exam administration. They both have over 20 years, 30, what, 20? Between 20 and 30. Many, many years here at CSLB. And so they'll be taking over after I leave. And I'm sure the testing division will continue to operate as our vision for us is a role model in the licensing examination industry, which we are, and so they will continue, correct? Thank you. Is there any questions?
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Thank you, Heidi.
I have one last item.
Right.
The item I3, review and approval of language for asbestos classification regulation. At the board's strategic planning meeting in April, the board directed staff to proceed with the establishment of a specialty classification for asbestos. Former committee chair Ed Lang and staff over the summer held several meetings, including meetings with members of the industry involved in asbestos abatement. You have in your packet for review and approval draft language for the establishment of an asbestos specialty classification. And I'm going to ask our licensing manager, Betsy Figuera, to give an explanation of the language you have before you for your consideration.
Thank you. So the subsection A of 832.22 for asbestos abatement contractor classification gives the definition of the classification. It's for abatement, which includes containment, encapsulation, removal, and disposal of the asbestos-containing material. Subsection B requires DOSH, Division of Health, Occupational Safety and Health registration with DOSH for the issuance of a license. Because of the way DOSH issues the registrations, they require actually licensure before they issue the registration, so it's sort of a catch-22. So we will accept if someone has an active application with DOSH as part of their application for their contractor's classification. If they are issued the license with just the application in place with DOSH, subsection C addresses that, and within 90 days of us issuing their classification or their license, they need to show proof that they now have the DOSH registration. If they don't show that proof, then their license would be suspended or the classification would be removed. Subsection D is the experience requirement. All classifications require 4 years of journey level experience within the last 10 years. Since this is a very technical and health and safety, there are a lot of health and safety issues with the asbestos abatement. We are also requiring that experience needs to be working for a licensed contractor in that classification. So either that contractor holds the C22 or they have the existing asbestos certification, which is an overlay, which I'll get to in a minute. But it's an existing certification that's just for asbestos abatement. Subsection E requires the DOSH certification for renewal of the license once it's issued. And subsection F is that this is only for asbestos abatement. It's not for doing any other work on the existing structure of in the contract. And it also does not include hazardous substance, which we also have a certification for, but that's not included in this classification. So on page 2, section 833 gives some clarification and some limitations on the classification. So subsection A clarifies that it is a standalone classification. Once you have this C22 classification, you can do asbestos abatement on any part of an existing structure. Subsection B specifies that a general building contractor, when they write a contract for a general building construction, they need to include 2 unrelated classifications. This is stating that the asbestos cannot be part of those 2 classifications unless they actually hold the C22 or if they have the asbestos certification, which is an existing certification. And that's addressed under subsection C. That's just clarifying that, as we had a legal opinion on earlier, that the existing certification for asbestos removal is an overlay. This is not the classification. It's just the certification that's provided by Business and Professions Code 7058.5. That is an overlay certification. So if somebody is licensed in roofing and they have the asbestos abatement or the asbestos certification, they can only do asbestos work on roofing contracts. Subsection D is basically grandfathering in anyone who has the current certification. They just need to make an application, and then the examination would be waived. Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
832.22, section C.
Yes.
It says within 90 days after the asbestos abatement contract license is issued. So within 90 days after we issue the license, they have to pony up with the DOSH
registration.
Registration.
Right.
So are we saying that on day 1 to day 89, they can be, we are authorizing them to abate, even though they don't have a DOSH registration?
Well, essentially, yes. We kind of have this situation of the chicken and the egg. DOSH won't give them a registration unless they have our license. The law requires that in addition to our license, they must have the registration.
I love government.
I know, Nick, right?
Oh my God.
So that, yes, so basically, day 1 to 89, they are going to be licensed, but the law does require registration with DOSH. So actually, Don, maybe I need to be corrected here. I don't think they would have the authority to do it because the law requires it.
They wouldn't have the authority to do it because in order for them to engage in basically asbestos abatement, they need to have both. So I think really what they are, we would give them a license. It's kind of a provisional license, but they really can't operate with it until they get the DOSH registration.
And so that's the way I'm reading it too, and so shouldn't we say that?
We should say that. We should clarify that.
Just to clarify.
If that's the way you read it, you're right. It should be clarified.
Okay.
Linda? Oh, I'm sorry, were you done, Paul?
No, you know me, I'm still running. I
Okay.
got
So,
plenty.
hold on there, Linda.
I just had one other question. Karen, there's a rule that allows, currently, that allows us, I think it's 100 square feet. I'm a steel subcontractor, is my company. And I believe there's a 100 square foot exemption. Is that in here still, or is that removed?
The 100 square foot exemption is still an exemption. We're not addressing that here.
But it's not listed as an exemption, so technically by this, aren't you removing it if you haven't said, except you're allowed to do that still? Is it in a different section? Should we cross-reference it?
It is in a different section. I would have to defer to legal counsel, but
It's in DOSH actually itself, and I believe it's referenced in
6501.
6501.8 of the Labor Code. That's where it's actually, that 100-foot exemption is.
Oh, so that's the 6501. Okay, so it's right there. Perfect in C. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thanks. Okay, now I'm done.
Linda, did you still have a question?
I did. Is this the first time that we've required the DOSH certification?
no, it's currently required for licensees who just have the asbestos certification. They still require the DOSH registration.
So if you have the asbestos certification, then you have the DOSH when you apply to go for this.
Well, not necessarily. We have about 1,500 people with certification, and only about 400 of them have gotten registered with DOSH. They got the certification, but they're not using it. So, no, they wouldn't all have that DOSH registration.
So they have the certification, but they can't actually go do anything because
Till they get
haven't
registered
done the
with
federal,
DOSH.
because they haven't done the and the asbestos certification portion says that?
Yeah, it's in statute that they have to have both. They must have our license and the registration. And not everyone that got our license went and got the DOSH registration.
So there are going to be, say 400 or whatever, that are going to actually have the DOSH when they come in. They'll actually have it.
They may, yes.
Because they will have gotten, because they actually are doing the work, so they did get registered, so they have it.
Right.
And this is how, it's the new guys who are going to come along who are going to have the problem.
I think a large majority, certainly when we implement this, will already have that registration. I don't think we're going to see people clamoring to become asbestos abatement. After meeting with the group, from what I understand, it's very expensive to be insured and all of the, what they have to go through to do this. People aren't looking to take that work on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask one
Yeah,
question too, real quick?
Yeah.
If we license them and they contract for this work using our license, they don't have the DOSH registration, they're in violation of federal law, number one. And number two, they can't do anything with the material because you have to have the DOSH registration before any of the hazardous waste sites would accept it because of everything that was said here. I mean, it's such a onerous thing to have this done, and unfortunately it happened in my house when a water leak occurred and my drywall was old enough to have asbestos in it. So I know what they had to go through with moon suits and taping off my house. I mean, it was crazy. I never saw anything like it, but I had a licensed DOSH certified contractor that employed all the right tactics. So I just want to make the point that, they still are going to be in violation of federal law if they do this work without the the registration of DOS or DOSH.
Point well taken. Just out of curiosity, anyone else have a question for Karen? Yeah, Kevin.
You talked about the C39 and the C22. If you have those, they'll be only able to do the roofing, or did I misunderstand that?
No,
Sorry.
What it is right now in law, we only have the asbestos abatement certification. And the asbestos certification is really not a standalone. It's something which you add to your license. So to the extent that you have a roofing license and you run into asbestos, you couldn't remove it unless you had that asbestos certification on top of it. If you just had, the problem which we found was that over the years, people who had these certifications were treating them as general standalone asbestos abatement. Basically, the trade had kind of evolved to saying, okay, it's not just a certification on top of my specialty license, but it was a standalone. Recognizing that, we came up with this proposal to establish them as a standalone asbestos abatement contractor. So there will still be, however, the certification which an individual specialty contractor could obtain if they want to use asbestos abatement for that narrow area of their specialty.
So my question is 833A, I'm sorry, B. No general building contractor shall contract for any project unless they have the C22. So some of those generals, I'm assuming, already hold the DOSH certificate. And
right. And they hold our certification, but as Don pointed out, the legal opinion from last year says the B is still restricted to the same requirements in existing law, to unrelated trades, blah, blah, blah. But what we found out was, and it's mostly Bs that are in this asbestos abatement.
Right.
They couldn't just take the roofing. They couldn't just do the abatement and roofing with their B and their certification. So once they have the C22, they can do one little piece, they can do all of it, they can do whatever, it's going to be a standalone class. But if all they have is their B with the certification, they're still going to be restricted to the same 2 unrelated trades, excluding framing, although that doesn't apply here.
So my real question is this the only classification that Bs are restricted from? Is there any other C license that a B cannot, if a B does not have a C license in any other trade or classification, they can still perform the work, but this is the one that says that fire sprinklers?
Well drilling and fire protection, but a B.
So it's, I guess what I'm trying to lay out is it's not new to us doing this type of thing for the Bs. But
No, I think this, after meeting with the industry groups that are involved in this, I think this is the better way to go about it, that they have their own separate specialty classification. So they take on a school and they find asbestos in the roof and in the flooring. They can take on that whole project without being restricted by either the specialty class or the 2 unrelated trades for the B.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Karen.
All right.
Are you concluding?
What we need on this one is a motion to authorize the staff to go forward and notice this as a proposed regulation. I'm sorry, you already have it.
Oh, that's all right.
Madam Chair, I so move that this language be taken forward.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the draft language and direct staff to proceed with the rulemaking process to establish a new specialty classification for asbestos abatement. Any other discussion?
I just have a question. Do we want to, as Paul was recommending, which I think is a good idea, put into the subsection C that they can't operate, even with our license, until they provide that DOSH registration, they're not allowed to operate. It'll be worded much more eloquently than I just said it. But
That's what we have done.
Madam Chair, I would include that in my motion if I get a second.
Moved and seconded. Any other further discussion about the motion as amended by Ed Lang? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in...
Oh, for God's sakes. See, I thought we'd get out. Can we vote?
We're going to adjourn temporarily.
No, I guess we can't take the vote.
Hey, Don? Don, should we just adjourn? We only have an executive. Should we just adjourn for the day? We might be out there.
Can you take the vote first?
Vote.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No.
Meeting is adjourned.
The meeting is adjourned. The motion's approved. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a conspiracy.